All right, we start our meetings with Pledge of Allegiance. Before that, we do a moment of silence to honor all those folks that protect us overseas, men and women. I want to especially give thanks to our Sheriff's Department and our Public Works that helped out along with the City of Duluth and Hermantown, for that matter, of significant snowfall that is still holding up traffic as we speak with school out, and folks that are still stuck, to give them thanks to for all the hard work they've put in over this weekend. Follow up with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Chapman, roll call, please.
Commissioner Jewell?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald? Here. Commissioner Musa? Here. Commissioner Nelson? Here. Commissioner Yuzovich? Present. And Sheriff Commissioner Boyle?
Here. Commissioner McDonald, we're in your home district here at the great Embarrass Town Hall. Would you say a few?
Yes, welcome to beautiful downtown Embarrass and Embarrass Township. There's a lot of history in this township, a great Finnish heritage. If you ever get the chance to come up and spend some time at the end of August for the Embarrass Regional Fair, you will see a little bit of everything. Some unbelievable crafts, unbelievable baking, and then a horse show that is no, I've never seen anything better. And you finish that up with a mud rush, and you've got a little bit of everything. So if you look in the annals of Minnesota history, Embarrass is always mentioned. And with that, I'll turn it over to Supervisor Gene Wright from Embarrass Township.
Supervisor Wright.
Good morning. My name is Gene Wright. I'd like to thank the St. Louis County Board for honoring us with their presence today, having their meeting in Embarrass. As Commissioner McDonald said, it's a great Finnish heritage in Embarrass. We have what's called the Sisu heritage. We have a tour. We'd be honored to have you come take our tour of the Finnish heritage in Embarrass. It's in the summertime. We don't go around in winter. And I guess with that, I'll turn it back over to the county board. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us. Next up, we have, this time citizens will be allowed to address the board on items not on the agenda. Speakers will have 5 minutes, and please address the board as a whole. First up on our sign-up list, we have Anita. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle and all commissioners. I did send a handout around. There are a couple on the back table as well. I just wanted to come today to present the financial history of the North St. Louis Soil and Water Conservation District since 2012. As you recall, in 2014, the district was zero funded, and I was hired in February of 2015, and from 2015, we have had revenues of about $269,000. Through 2018, our revenues are $811,000. 2019 will be right around $900,000 in revenues. Most of those, currently 60%, are from the county. A large part of that, the bulk of that is the aquatic invasive species grant that we have to conduct crop inspections. And and then we do charges for service would be like our tree sales, charges for forest stewardship plans, and then we do some contract work for Lake County SWCD to do aquatic invasive species inspections on the Lake County side, but right near Ely, so it's using existing resources to collaborate. And then our expenditures there are graphed as well. In 2015, we had expenditures of $160,000, and in 2018, expenditures of $719,000, and in 2019, that'll be, over $800,000. So we currently have 5.4 full-time equivalent staff members, and are looking to add a part to full-time. I'm not quite sure what that position will be yet, but an administrative support person in 2020. That will be our growth for 2020, pending other additional funding sources. If you look at our operations, we went in 2015 from an operational budget of $60,000 to 2018, an operational budget of $240,000. So we're at about 48% operational costs and 52% expenditures. So if you look at the project expenditures, we had $292,000 of county funding, which is 41% of the expenditures. That primarily is the aquatic invasive species inspectors and programmatic expenses related to that. Questions at that point?
Anita, I just wanted to, when did you start, Anita?
I started in 2015, February of 2015.
I mean, it's, these numbers just speak for themselves of the amazing turnaround you've done for Conservation District. Thank you. Commissioner Nelson.
Mr. Chair, this is unusual to have this presentation in our opening 5 minutes, so I hope you'll allow a little bit of
No, please.
latitude. It is, folks, I'm going to pull a Mike Forsman here, and I apologize, but I told you so. I told this board that this district needed a change. And I just want to point out, look at what this change has done for this district. It is truly amazing. And not just that, but the amount of collaboration that Anita has brought to the county in terms of working with our planning department and working with others that did not exist before. So, and the work that they're doing on aquatic invasives, Commissioner McDonald knows more about that because a lot of that activity is taking place up in his district, but it has truly been a transformation. And I remember that meeting in the Virginia courthouse when we had the battle to pull the funding, to finally get the district to acknowledge the fact that they had a significant issue with their director. When they did, this thing has turned around. And those aren't easy changes to make, I understand that. But for those of you that were around for that vote, and those of you who were around for that discussion, please don't forget it, because change sometimes hurts. But, when you have change with these kinds of results, you got to feel good about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other commissioners, questions? Commissioner McDonald.
Again, Anita, on behalf of the board, thank you for what you've done. And we were talking before the meeting, the proposals for the AIS are due on December 6th. And look forward to sitting down with Anita very soon after that and going through any new applications that we may have for AIS grants. But it has been something that I know in the Ely area, in Lake Vermilion area, it is something that is still on the front burner, and we need to keep it there. Looking to expand up to Captogama, and it's going to be crucial in the AIS world. So thanks for all you do with your staff, great people. I've enjoyed working with you, and look forward to seeing you very shortly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
Mr. Chair, one last thing.
Commissioner Nelson.
I did question Anita on the quality of the paper she gave this to us on. I was worried that maybe we had increased your budget too much, but she assured me that this was old stock that was laying around that she wanted to use up. So I just needed to point that out, because pay attention to dollars and cents.
Very well, very well. Nita, anything else?
I think one of the most proud accomplishments that I can say is We are now at a point of having 5.8 months of operating reserves, which is coming from zero. I've been working to hit 6 to 9 months, and I can, say that at the end of 2019, we will absolutely be able to designate enough to have between that 6 and 12 months of operating reserves. So that's just an exciting position. It gives the board and I comfort to know that should some funding not come through on time, we have some money to carry us over for a few months. So.
Brilliant work. Thank you for all you do. Do we have any other citizens that will be speaking on anything that's not on the agenda today? Any other citizens? Seeing none, for those items listed on the board agenda or committee of the whole, citizens will be allowed to address the board at the time the motion's on the floor. Commissioners, we have the consent agenda in front of us.
So moved.
Support.
McDonald, second by Nelson. Anything to be pulled, commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. We have one item under regular agenda, under Public Works and Transportation Committee, purchase of 12 Mack Granite tandem trucks from Twin Cities Mack and Volvo Trucks, Roseville, Minnesota. The state of Minnesota contract price of $1,588,074.06. Taxes included. Someone to move this?
Mike Scott.
Mike Scott, supported by Commissioner Nelson. Administrator Gray.
Well, thank you, Chair Boyle, Commissioners. We had a good conversation last week with Director Falvesy, and he had prepared a follow-up memorandum describing the many factors that go into making a truck equipment selection and the impacts on fuel efficiency that the question was raised by Commissioner Jewell. So I think people have a lot better understanding today, at least I do, of the many contributing factors, including the size and scale of trucks, the efficiency of the routing, the ability to do more things with a single truck than ever before, the impact of emission equipment on fuel standards and the like. So I think it was received good feedback from commissioners on that. So the action before the board today, having responded to some questions that were raised on the fuel efficiency front, is to approve the purchase of 12 Mack Granite tandem trucks, and doing so accelerating the budget expenditure so that these trucks can be ready for next season's challenges, and hopefully we won't have 21.7 inches of challenges going into the year. But I think this really highlights how critical this equipment investment is, and I really appreciate the board's support as part of our budget process for making this investment in equipment. We can see firsthand how important that is following this long weekend's snow event.
Commissioners. Commissioner Jewell.
I'm losing my voice, so I won't say much, but I would say that given the size of our fleet, the variety of vehicles, et cetera, that we have, the importance of climate change in this time, and the fact that on a national level we are going backwards, it seems important that local government step up and start doing things. And so one of my points in this is that this is a place where we can have impact, and questioning what kind of fuel economy we get on these, but more generally for our entire fleet is important. And so, you know, it's people on this board often say local folks make good decisions, and while we may not be making good decisions nationally, we can make those good decisions locally. And it's particularly notable that there's the Paris Accords are meeting in Europe and Madrid, and our president is not sending anybody. And while it's getting hotter, we're having bigger snows, more rain events. Anita and the soil and water districts are having to think more and more about this. We better be doing our little piece to make a difference. So I'm asking this about this. I think there's been great information from Jim about this, but I'll be asking this on a regular basis, and hopefully we can step up as one of those local governments that is going to make a difference. And as the biggest county in the state, that really does make sense to me. And so I look forward to seeing what we can do to get our total fuel usage dropping over time as we use more efficient vehicles to do that. Thanks.
Commissioners. Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner. A couple of quick things, okay? First of all, I'm not going to let this go without complaining about $96,910.06 in sales tax. Tonight, we'll go and sit down with our legislative delegation, our partners who have chosen and continue to choose to tax our taxpayers. And if this isn't emergency equipment, folks, then you know what? They didn't just have a big snow event in Duluth. If this isn't emergency equipment, it doesn't do us any good to have ambulances and sheriff's cars and fire trucks if you can't get there. The first line of emergency equipment is these plow trucks. And yet, we continue to pay sales tax roughly equivalent to the cost of another truck. Roughly equivalent to the cost of another truck. And if we don't continue to complain to our state legislators, it'll be the first thing I bring up tonight if given the opportunity. Because this is absurd. And it's timely to say, you know, y'all love to talk about what you're going to do whenever you have a surplus. How about if you start talking about not putting sales tax on emergency equipment? On emergency equipment. Because that's what this is. And I think that's, especially for their Duluth contingent, they certainly should see the value in that emergency equipment after this weekend. So with that, the other pieces here, look, I hate to keep going back and going down memory lane on some of this stuff, but when we got rid of, and this wasn't easy for me because I got to tell you, the major supplier for trucks in St. Louis County was a Virginia business. And it was International Trucks. But those International Trucks just were not working for us anymore. We were having way too many problems with them. Frames rotting out in 6-7 years. Any number of other issues. When we switched to Mack and made the commitment to staying with Mack, we have really transformed our entire fleet. You still see a couple of old Internationals hanging around out there, folks. But the ones you're seeing out there now are over 10 years old. And the only reason they're still around is because, quite frankly, in an emergency, we might need them. And they're still operational. But the Macks have made a tremendous, tremendous difference. I will tell you that on Friday, over the weekend, I had a purchasing agent for one of our major contractors in northeastern Minnesota. He actually stopped me in a department store and said, "Commissioner, how in the world do you get such a great deal on Mack trucks? This state contract price on Mack trucks is almost amazing." He told me that they're roughly $30,000 less than what they pay in the private sector. So Mack is stepping up on the government level, folks, and we should acknowledge that as well. A couple of things that I thought people need to hear about is because those decisions that were made almost 10 years ago now, 10, 11 years ago, to make these switches have made a huge, huge difference. And I think it's one of the reasons why quite frankly, you have the Mack and Volvo in Duluth now servicing these vehicles is because of St. Louis County. Because it was not there when we first purchased them. They were not servicing them here. And it was a big issue. And we had a lot of discussion about it, but we made the switch anyhow. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Other commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move this to vote. Before that, just wanted to acknowledge Commissioner Jewell for being the only commissioner in Duluth that was snowed out or snow plowed out for vehicle-wise. Had to pick myself up on the east side and then Commissioner Olson on the west side that are still plowed in to get us to the great area of Embarrass, Minnesota. They say politics is all about timing. You don't ask for plow trucks in August. You do it this time of year, and this is perfect. This is why we do it. It's for safety. It's for constituents to get to and from work, school, and if need be, to emergency settings at a prompt time. So absolutely behind this, 100%. Move this to vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Commissioners, that's end. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Olson, second by Jugovich. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion passes. We'll take about 5-10 minutes before we get into the committee. All right, Commissioners, we'll get the Committee of the Whole going. Clerk Chapman, can we have roll, please?
Commissioner Jewell? Here. Commissioner Olson? Here. Commissioner McDonald? Here. Commissioner Musa? Here. Commissioner Nelson? Here. Commissioner Yugovich?
Present.
And Chair Commissioner Boyle?
Here. Commissioners, we have the consent agenda in front of us.
So moved.
Commissioner Jewell, support by Commissioner Olson. Commissioners, anything to pull? Seeing none, we'll move the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Commissioners, you see we have time-specific presentations. The first one at 10:30 with Jeff Anderson and Ricky McManus is going to be postponed till January or so due to the fact that weather-related conditions, Ricky could not get up here for sure. We want his testimony.
Nor could Mr. Chair Philip, and I think that was part of it was intended to be part of the presentation as well. So we're looking forward to providing an update and sharing some highlights from the production guide that we helped support. And I think it'll be a timely update, but it works fine in January as well, so we'll make sure that happens.
Right. Now, 1 o'clock, we have the tour of the Lampa manufacturing, which I'm excited to see. Moving forward, we got a busy day on the range. Commissioners, I got the regular agenda in front of us, and first up we have Finance and Budget. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Chair Boyle. Our first item under Finance and Budget Committee is Board Letter Number 19517, which is to reimburse our county departments and deposit 2019 shoreline sale proceeds in the Environmental Trust Fund and shoreline sales. I will move it. Is that a second?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner McDonald. And Administrator Gray, would you please care to frame?
Thank you, Chair Olson. The action before the board is to make approve the transfer of the sale proceeds from our shoreline sales to the Environmental Trust Fund. This is both for the end of 2018 and 2019. The net balance that's being transferred to the Environmental Trust Fund is approximately $925,000. The other information that's shared there, any costs related to the administration of the sale are reimbursable and directly deposited to the Land and Minerals Department and to the tax forfeit trust as a repayment for the services rendered. But as you can see, there's a sizable deposit going into the Environmental Trust Fund. We use those funds, the interest on an annual basis to support a number of activities, promoting the environment and promoting the administration of our septic systems, and so that this is significant that we're adding to that corpus. I would just give a quick update on the status of the shoreline sales. I've had that conversation with Director Weber on this front, and a number of questions from commissioners. Of the 278 shoreland leases, 173 have been purchased. 60 were relinquished, and we are in the process of selling those, of which 40 have been sold, and 45 continue to be leased. So we're down to 20 active sales, and part of that, quite frankly, has been delayed because of issues around survey and legal descriptions, and so we're making sure that those are going forward. But it's been very impressive that we've been able to sell these many lots and effectively, as this board is well aware, add these properties and these parcels to the tax roll. So that's a big positive. In any event, again, the action before the board is twofold. One, to direct proceeds to the Land and Minerals Department, the Tax Forfeit Trust, for their role in the sale process, and to approve the transfer of $924,626.39 to the Environmental Trust Fund.
Thank you, Administrator. Commissioners, any comments, questions? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Administrator Gray, what's the total amount in the Environmental Trust Fund after this deposit?
I believe the total amount is in excess of 16 million. I'm going to verify that number. I'd have to reach out to the auditor for that.
I'd like to get
We'll get that update.
I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 19, but I would like to see that. And I would also like to, and I apologize, I would have called on this, but yesterday was a crazy day, and quite frankly, up north, we didn't get our packets until yesterday. Whether they were hung up at the Duluth Post Office or just didn't find their way out to Fail Township, I don't know, but I would like to see a rundown on these costs that we're reimbursing into Land and Minerals and into our legal services. There's a whole lot of money going back in there, and I'm trying to figure out how we have that much going in and only that much going into the trust. Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Madam Chair, can I ask that we move that without recommendation? Just so it's down there so we can have this discussion on it once we get the other information,
That's fine with me. Okay.
if that's okay.
Okay.
Apologize for the lateness of that request.
Okay. So we will have that moved without recommendation then. So the second item under Finance and Budget is Board Letter Number 19518, which is some revisions to our St. Louis County purchasing rules and regulations. And I will move this one as well. Have support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Jewell. Is that it? Okay. Administrator Gay, please.
Thank you, Chair Olson. Commissioners, the request to the board today is to approve revisions to the St. Louis County Purchasing Rules and Regulations. These revisions are intended to be in compliance with audit recommendations and to essentially self-certify the counties so that we don't have any conflict, one, with audit provisions, and two, with federal procurement requirements. So with your indulgence, I will ask Director Visco to talk us through some of these changes, and they're timely and appropriate, especially given the audit implications and feedback we've received. So, Donna, if you wouldn't mind, I think that we'll have you talk us through it if you would.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm probably going to go down as record as the director who changed the rules most. They're very important, and especially now that ARC is using our rules, and we may be at a point where another agency will be using our rules shortly. It's very, very important that we keep these rules up to date and that we make sure that we are following our rules, because the big thing in these audits is if you have it in your rules, you have to follow them. So that's what's very important for us to do here. So the big change, as I said, is doing a self-certification. With the new contract routing system, we'll be able to just add this directly into every single contract and solicitation that goes out by the county or ARC or any other agency. Therefore, making sure that anytime any federal money is used, that we have made sure that those people are not debarred, or the firms are not debarred, and have not broken any rules. This is very important, and it's something that we needed to get done by the end of the year. So I apologize for not waiting a little longer, but it had to be done before this audit. The second thing that we are looking at is the changing of the term St. Louis County. And that is to make sure that when we're talking about St. Louis County, it also refers to ARC when they're using our rules, or any other agency who determines to use our rule. Not a big thing, but it's going to help. The next section that we're looking at changing is just getting rid of a typo where services agreements was not removed when the word professional service agreement should have been removed. The fourth thing is a request from our IT director. If you remember, we had asked that anything over $150 we do a purchase order on. That resulted in an amazing amount of paperwork and extra work all around the county and was not efficient. So what we did is we had to relook at this and say, okay, how can we still keep the control so we're not buying junk and putting it on our system, but yet give people the ability they need to get their work done, to buy what they need to get. And so this is what we came up with. The fifth and last thing we looked at was, with talking with Attorney Mackey, we've had no place in our rules that says that under $5,000 there didn't have to be a contract. And if there was a contract, the contract had to be signed by the attorneys, and it had to get a damian by the attorneys. Again, we're looking at something that's kind of a waste of time. A contract less than $5,000 does not need 14 pages of stuff, and it should not be reviewed by everybody in the world. To keep everybody comfortable with this, remember with the new contract management system that comes in, again, we will have a template for these small agreements that'll be pre-approved by the attorneys, and that way it can be kind of a fill in the blank, and these will be kept up to date. So those are the kind of things that we're really looking forward to getting changed here. And part of the reason, again, is because of the new contract management system. We really want to make these changes now, so that as that contract system is being developed, we've got all those little extra steps in there that we feel are important, not only to protect the county, but to make sure that everybody knows what's going on and things are very clear and efficient.
Thank you, Director Visco. Commissioners, any questions for Director Visco? Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions regarding this? Okay, seeing none, we'll move it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item under Finance and Budget is Board Letter Number 19519, which is our 2020 budget resolution and narrative, and I will move it. Do I have a second?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Boyle. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Olson, and thank you for all your support in getting us to this point on the budget resolution. This is quite possibly the most detailed and lengthiest resolution we see all year. It is heavily influenced with the support of Auditor Nielsen and her team to help make all of our budget decisions compliant with our accounting and financial treatment and financial reporting perspective. So a lot of the length is really driven by ensuring that, again, our budget decisions are in adherence with accounting standards and comply in that way. So the action before the board is to review the proposed 2020 budget resolution and narrative. Prior to its adoption at December 17th, we will be looking for any feedback, but I will state to the board that this budget resolution, which has also been worked on extremely diligently by Deputy Administrator Fritzinger and our Budget Director, Breanne Graber. In fact, through the midst of the storm, fortunately she had a large enough vehicle to pound her way down to the courthouse and worked late last night to make sure that everything is up to speed, both for this resolution and the public budget hearing tonight. But this does reflect the proposed levy increase. It does propose or reflect the proposed targeted investments in personnel, which I believe is a net increase of 9 personnel, primarily to support specific activities and mandates in human services, but also to reflect an increasing workload in our attorney's office and the public safety front. But in any event, this does reflect the culmination of the budget process and decisions that the board has made. There are quite a bit of materials and information, financial information by fund, by department, by type of fund. And I'll ask Director Graber to walk through the actual resolution itself at a high level and just assure the board that this does reflect, again, the hard work by this board and direction and input with respect to the 2020 budget. With that, I turn over to Breanne.
Yeah, great. Director Graber.
Thanks, Administrator Gray. I'll go over it real briefly, but just to kind of navigate through this big resolution, the first page really outlines our actual levy, the $145 million out of about a $407 million budget overall. Represents about 35.7% of the total budget. These next few pages that look very accounting-like, if you split the line down the middle, it's really showing all the expenses on this side, the various funds. You can see the general fund, special revenue funds. I won't go into detail. And then at the very bottom, you'll see a total of $410 million. It looks a little confusing. You just subtract what the fund balance is, and that'll equate to the $407 million total. Then the next few pages, and again, I won't go into major detail, but you can see the general fund, what all is encompassing the general fund, and then how at the very end, you'll see on page 2 of that, the means of financing. So you can see where property tax levy is supporting about $62.5 million of the general fund, and then you can continue on with all the various funds. And then it gets into the actual narrative, and I don't think that's numbered, but the county-wide. And at the beginning here, these are all kind of the county treatment of what happens at the end of the year, whether things roll into fund balance, whether it can be carried over, whether they can be assigned. You can see number 4, for example, they talk about the unassigned portions of fund balance, making sure we have some cash flow purposes. Number 8, for example, authorizes department heads within their department to move around positions, add, delete, but anything that would have to come to the board to get approval over a certain piece. Let's see, so on number 14, you can see we are down a position in the auditor's office, the information specialist. And number 15 shows the additional employees that this budget resolution is approving. So we have 2 social service specialists, home and community-based services, 4 in the children and family services, 1 in the adult mental health, and 1 in the children's mental health area, and then the attorney's office, an attorney and investigator. Then moving on, again, all of this just really telling where fund balances can go. You can see all under the assigned non-departmental revenue. I will point out number 18 under Board of Commissioners, there'll be a clerical update, so that'll be reflected in our next meeting, board meetings agenda. It's supposed to be $65,896. And we did update some of the amounts for the chair and vice chair. And I'll point out, a lot of this is the same from previous years, but number 22 was an additional thing this year. I I know the commissioners representing are sitting on the board of the St. Louis County Historical Society. They've presented a special project to catalog for cataloging services, really ensuring we have appropriate records of all of St. Louis County artifacts. It's a kind of a longer project, but here we have specified giving them $98,854 for that. And as you can see in number 24, we have a base allocation, a 2.5% increase over last year at $417,000. So we're just very separating the base allocation versus a special project, and they'll have certain things they have to accomplish for that. But number 23, I didn't want to skip over the Arrowhead Regional Corrections budget. You can see the $16,568,785. And nothing else has changed in number 24, our aid to other agencies. Skipping past, again, Human Resources, Recorder's Office, Auditor, I'll just keep going. Special Revenue Funds, Public Health and Human Services, again, committed, assigned. Keep going. These are flat to number 44 for Public Health and Human Services, the amounts that we're giving them. I'll skip a little bit over, so Land and Minerals, I'm around 51. I'll be flipping to 52. These are just examples of various charges. So we bill the Land and Minerals Department for legal fees for the Attorney's Office, rent, information technology, safety and risk management, administration. So you can see how those are outlined. Along with the enterprise funds, the same will be in number 58. We'll bill the Environmental Services Department since they're an enterprise fund for those services as well. And then skipping down to the Shoreline Sales Environmental Trust Fund, we have about $1 million to allocate. These are the needs that we've addressed this year. If people remember last year, we're done with the Midway Sewer project, so that is no longer reflected in these, and we do have some dollars left, should we need something. And then number 6 and 60, I won't go through these. If you have questions later, come get me. These are transfers between funds, and then 61 is transfers within funds as well, and then 62 is transfers between departments. So just basically authorizing those accounting treatments of where the monies are flowing. And then finally, in 63, these are the list of grants. We just want to make sure that we're aware of what we're, grant dependent on, and those are a list of those, and the accounting treatment of those is on the back. And then I also gave you all this document if you want to just have a real brief overview of things, of how things are funded. Obviously, the levy is on the right-hand side, and you can see that totals to be that $145 million. And you can see that left total under the expenditures column of $407.
Thank you. Any questions at all for Director Graver?
I guess if this is the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I would like to divide the question. I would like to pull item number 23 out of the resolution and deal with that separately.
Okay. Attorney Mackey, how does that, I don't know the point of protocol for how that works. Could you help me, please?
Madam Chair, I believe that it would be a motion to divide the question. It would have to be seconded and they would both be then handled separately.
So this is a motion on Commissioner Nelson's part to divide the question.
It is not a,
It's not?
That's what, okay,
We
Commissioner.
have a,
Well, actually, Attorney Mackey, let's hear from her first.
I would just request a 5-minute break to see what the rules say.
Okay, great. We'll take a 5-minute break. Attorney Mackey, would you?
Two issues that will be on the table.
So Attorney Mackey has answered the question and let us know that we will be, that the question will be divided. So we'll be handling the budget resolution in two separate resolutions. So we'll discuss everything separate from number 23, which is the ARC budget first, and then we'll talk about the ARC budget second. With that in place, any comments comments, questions there?
Is this on the overall budget then?
Yes.
Okay. Just a little background, Mr. Gray, on the septic loans. Where are we at with that? How many have we given out? I mean, that's been a very successful program. Just when you get a chance, if you could let us all know on the history of that.
Chair Olson, Commissioners, we will do that. The program has had some peaks and valleys in terms of its effectiveness, but I had a conversation last week with Director St. Lawrence, and we will continue to examine that funding. We have some available resources, and our goal is to get more funding and more loans out, more loans collected where they're not forgivable. And in fact, I think he's going to be working with the commissioners individually and collectively to look at maybe some refinements to make sure that the loans are more acceptable to folks and we get more systems upgraded. But we've been matching Bowser's contributions. We've been putting in additional monies from the Environmental Trust Fund to support loan activities, and there's a couple of different types, low interest loans and then forgivable loans. And so I will ask him to provide an update as to the status of that. We do have, as we've discussed in passing with Chair Olson, we do have a decent fund balance there, so we're hopeful to continue to expand the outreach and utilization of those funds for septic system upgrades and compliances.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To that point, the septic program being transferred over to a new director we've tasked perhaps environmental services with way more things than we should have in the past. And the septic loans have been one of the issues that will be coming in front of the Septic and Solid Waste Subcommittee very shortly. But again, we've been kind of on hold to get this new director in place. I believe that's being advertised for, or very close to being advertised for. The new director of this septic end. And the loans have been, up until about a year ago, have been going very well. Some of our commercial ones we've quit doing because that was where we had probably a lot more exposure, a lot more risk of failure. We've pulled back our wings a little bit on that, and the Septic and Solid Waste Subcommittee is going to be dealing with also one of the items that we have on our agenda is dealing with prioritization of septic systems for the loan or forgiveness program, because again, we do have imminent public health threats and some of the other issues. One of the things that I had thought about asking about is that those dollars left over from that Midway Sewer project, that's basically a septic issue. I'd like to see those transferred into that septic loan program so that we can continue with that. I don't see any reason for leaving it in the Midway Sewer project at this point, or at least once we know all the bills have been paid there. I'd like to see that put in, and even if it's put in on a special piece of trying to pick up some of those septic systems close by that municipal system that we missed in that Midway Sewer project would even be appropriate expenditures, I believe, for it. I'll stop with that, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go, Minister Gray.
Well, I would just add to the conversation. Thank you, Chair Olson. The Midway, specifically to the Midway Sewer, it's approximately just under $19,000 a year. And but in the bigger context, we have some available resources. I would fully support, if that's the board's direction, to redirect that towards the loan program, but we do have that. I would also like to give an update, and I'm going to apologize for forgetting the name. I think starting this week or next week, we do have a new lead person for our septic area, reporting to Interim Director Jablonski. And can you, with your indulgence, Madam Chair, could we just highlight the name?
Yes, Commissioners, I was going to send an email out right after this, but I can ignore the email. We hired a gentleman by the name of Keith Wiley He oversaw the Douglas County, Wisconsin's zoning and septic program for over 19 years. So he has his inspector license, soil licensing, stormwater licensures. So we're pretty excited. He's very technologically advanced for utilization of technology in the program. So we're excited to have him come on board. And he'll be starting in 1 week and probably reaching out to quite a few people to introduce himself, but dig right in. And the septic loan program is one area that we really want to get a good handle on moving forward and promoting.
And I would just editorially add between the qualifications and the impact that Keith made to the interview committee and the efforts of Jennifer transitioning as a successor to Mary Anderson. We have just a great team there, so we're very excited, but it'll be nice to have, from a workload standpoint, as Commissioner Nelson acknowledged, it will be nice to have this point person unique to the septic side, and the fact that he happens to bring, even broader skill sets, that's just a bonus. And I will ask Director St. Lawrence, working with Director Jablonski, to send out an update on behalf of administration to the board, just as to where we're at with our lending program. I would add that another development on that front, not to belabor the point, has been the great work of the auditor's office. They're actually taking over the administration of a number of the loans, and Auditor Nielsen's team's insight and has given us some real strength in terms of administration of the loans. So we've got some different ways that we're handling and tracking the loans, and I think we're in a better position today because of the auditor's office involvement and the oversight, and the transition between Director St. Lawrence and Director Jablonski has been very positive. So lots of good things happening on that front.
Commissioners, other comments, questions on this first general budget? I would like to make just a couple of comments. I wanted just to say thank you to all of the administrative staff that worked really hard on this, and our auditor who worked really hard on putting this budget together. I think the information that we have in front of us, we get to look at the budget from a few different angles. We get to read the narrative. We have a few different ways of looking at the numbers that I think provide us with more transparency and more information. And I think the growth that we've had in the last year of having more information available and spending a little bit more time on the budget and kind of elevating the knowledge base of the entire board, all of the commissioners on the budget, has been really important and has been something that's really been helpful and successful. And so, you have a lot of information here. If there's anything you have questions about, I know administration will be happy to answer. You can also feel free to contact me, any of the commissioners individually, if you have any questions. I'd be happy to talk through it or answer it too. So thank you for all your work, and I'm very pleased with all the information that we have in front of us and have the ability to discuss and look at. All right, so with that, yes. Oh, sorry, good to see you.
I want to say one additional thing. I want to thank Chair Olson for her work on this. Amazing work, her first year as chair. It makes sense to me that we give her the chance to do it again next year, because it is the kind of thing that commissioners have had for a number of years, and actually Northern commissioners have largely had this for years. So thank you, Commissioner Olson, for your work on this, and thanks for making us look good in conjunction with Ms. Graber and others and our staff. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Joel. Okay. All right, with that, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the first part of the motion passes on the budget, and now we'll, I guess, open the discussion around number 23, or the ARC budget. Questions, comments? About that?
Does not have to be moved again.
No, it doesn't. No. No, thank you. Open for discussion. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 3 is Arrowhead Regional Corrections budget, and It's no secret, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this, but folks, $16.5 million. If you look at that meteoric rise of that over the past 10 years, coupled with the fact that if we talk just at NERC, the population is lingering around that 90 number when we have the capacity for 144. We simply have got to do something. I've been told over and over and over again that, Commissioner Nelson, you've got it moving. It's moving. It's being corrected as we speak. Well, I'm not pulling my foot off the accelerator because I have heard this narrative before that indeed we're going to fix this. This problem is going to go away. It's not going away. And not only do we need to continue to push at the management level at NERC, and the absurdity that 80+% of this budget is St. Louis County dollars, and yet we only have 3 votes on a board that manages this budget. And let's not forget that it was just a few years ago that we finally got this budget moved so that they actually had to submit their budget to us before we had to submit our budget to the state. That's how crazy this deal has been for as many years as I can remember. But we've got a lot of work here to do. I can't vote for a budget that continues to go up at this pace, given the amount of services being delivered and the lack of oversight that I've seen regarding fiscal matters at Arrowhead Regional Corrections. So with that, I will be voting against this portion of the budget and wanted to divide the question so that I could vote for the balance of the budget. Even though there are things in the balance of the budget that I would just as soon not be doing, I understand that these are investments we're making in our community that are necessary investments. And hopefully we can work on getting that number down before next year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jewell.
So I guess that can't go unanswered. The only thing that I'll say is that Commissioner Nelson has his opinion, and all of us can have opinions, but the facts don't actually support that opinion. And there is action, and there are active members of St. Louis County's board who have been working hard to assure that we do better at NERC. And this year, actually, the ARC budget came in at less than the county's budget as far as an increase. So we actually are having impact. And I actually think it's true that Commissioner Nelson has had impact by making his voice heard. But I think even more of the impact is being made by the staff at ARC, the members of the board who are actively involved and invested in it. And if we want to protect our citizens and assure that people are held accountable, we need to keep that involvement. So, yep, it's true that it's a chunk of money. And I don't think anybody on the board wants offenders running around wildly in our communities doing things that we don't want them to do. We want a safe community. And I will continue to support the work of some really great people at ARC doing that work. And I think we're in good shape and we'll move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Jewell. Any other comments? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Jewell, I would largely leave that go if it weren't for the personal attacks. But the fact of the matter is that the facts do support the mismanagement and the fact that that agency is not running anywhere near where it needs to run. And those facts have been there for a number of years. And we have done over those many, many years, we have worked very, very diligently to make certain that our voice was heard up at NERC. The problem is, it still isn't being heard. And please, I will not be painted as someone who does not care about public safety. In fact, Commissioner Jewell, if you talk about support of public safety and support of our sheriff's department, I would ask any member of this board to please go ask Sheriff Lippman who the most supportive member of this board is to public safety in the sheriff's department, because I know the answer to that question. So please don't paint me as someone who doesn't care about criminals running around our streets. NERC can and could be a tremendous asset to this community. There are two specific problems. One, St. Louis County needs to be a lot more involved. It's our money, it's our taxpayers' money. Two, we have relied on that entity to go to the state for additional funding. We have been promised for as many years as I can remember that we will get additional funding through the DOC. All we have to be is patient. We just have to continue to make our case. Every member of this board saw what the DOC has done to us in the last 10 years. We have lost money year after year after year in support from the Department of Corrections, while the Department of Corrections budget has continued to see increases. They are not our partners. That is as simple as that. We run the only work farm of its kind in a 5-state area. This is it. And folks, we need to make some changes up there. I started off a long time ago with simple little changes, like eliminating pizzas on Sunday that cost us $100,000 a year to have Domino's deliver them in. If anybody cares to hear the history up there, I am more than happy to go through a very detailed history of what we have gotten done up there. But the pace has slowed so dramatically. If we don't see some change up there, my fear is that we are going to be in a position where we will no longer have the asset of the work farm, which would be an absolute shame. Because what we had was a jewel. What we have allowed to happen is we've allowed that jewel to turn back into some rough stone that we now have to get back up there and try and polish again. But it's not going to happen with counties that, quite frankly, don't send their prisoners to the work farm. They keep them in their jails because it's cheaper. It's hard to argue with $50 a night jail beds when our prices up there, even after we've made significant adjustments for capital expenditures, are still in the 130s. So Commissioner Jewell, please don't paint the fact that I haven't looked at all of the facts. Because Commissioner Jewell, I study the facts before I ever take positions. I don't take imaginary positions. So this one, I cannot support. I told everyone I could not support it. And I'm simply stating what needs to happen up there. I'm not stating it to throw it out. I'm stating we need to work at it and fix it because I think it has value. And I think that even though some members of our judiciary don't seem to think it has value, but I believe it does. I believe in restorative justice. I believe we can do a much better job of restorative justice. I believe those crews out there can have an impact in the community. And those are things that we could accomplish if we had more direct control. Thank you, Madam Chair. That is the reason for my vote against this matter. There is much more to discuss on this. I look forward to a study being done by St. Louis County only. St. Louis County only, because this is our money. This is our budget.
Commissioner Jewell.
So, again, Commissioner Nelson, you're welcome to your opinion. And you've been missing board, you've refused to participate in the active involvement of the ARC board in a strategic planning effort. You haven't attended board meetings. You are not aware of what has been happening. And so as much as you have been part of the ARC board for a long time, never was it on our agenda during your term that St. Louis County should be pushing the state to get the DOC to invest more. So we are going to do that this year. We're doing it in part because it's very clear that it's a problem. But those kind of things are in fact important to moving us forward. I also want to really challenge that this can be blamed on others. We are the group that has the most people that in need of corrections. So in fact, we pay more of the budget. Trying to blame the others because they have fewer people who in their counties and fewer people who commit crimes as a result is like, that's not a surprise. I mean, and there are a variety of reasons that, you know, that the way it's structured is that we do this. I also... Are you done, Commissioner? I am clearly as concerned as you are about finances and assuring that we spend money well, as is Commissioner Olson, who've been attending these meetings in your office. I know that Commissioner McDonald has agreed to participate as well. So we, as members of this board, who are also knowledgeable and experienced and able to help with budgets, are definitely concerned about what's going on and working to make a difference in this. So this consistent accusation of bad action by other people, pointing fingers at them, saying that the staff and others aren't doing their job, simply isn't true. And that's why I am so adamant in standing up. And the piece about holding people accountable, we clearly all want to see that happen, and I see no good in having us put ARC on trial.
Thank you, Commissioner Joe.
Personal privilege, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes for personal privilege.
I asked the chair for that while I was supposedly interrupting. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Does this go to you?
The meeting here after the break. Are there any comments from any other commissioners that they would like to say or have any questions they'd like to ask? Okay, seeing none, I would just have a brief thing to say. I sit on the Arrowhead Regional Corrections Board in addition to Commissioner Nelson and Commissioner Jewell. And we do have a charge in front of us to kind of build the next 40 years of what corrections is going to look like for us. We made a lot of decisions in the 70s when we first joined our Joint Powers Agreement and formed our CCA and became, used this structure to develop what our corrections was going to look like. Corrections has changed. Things are different now. We're not locking people up in the same way. We're keeping people in the community, partly because we've learned through studies that that's better for them. So now we have less people in lockup. So we have buildings that are too big, and we have some adjustments we need to make in this new age of corrections. And so this board, the ARC board and the St. Louis County board, will continue to push to figure out what that next 30, 40 years looks like and what kind of budget that means, what kind of building that means, and what kind of programming that means. And that's really what we're moving forward in doing. And that is the conversations that we're having, and that is the purpose of a study that may occur, and that is the purpose of of our conversations for strategic planning on the ARC board that I've been able to participate in over the last few months. So there are changes that need to be made, but they're not because of mismanagement or a lack of power by St. Louis County on the board. They've been made by the changing times and that we need to make new decisions for the next 30, 40 years of what that's going to look like. So I'm invested and excited to be a part of that process and be a part of those conversations, which I have been and I'll continue to be, and help provide guidance to that board and be an active member from this board on the ARC board. All right, let's take the vote. All those in favor of the ARC budget? Yes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. And I think,
We have a roll call vote on that, Madam Chair.
sure. Chapman?
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musa.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Nay.
Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the last thing under Finance and Budget Committee, which is Board Letter Number 19520. It's the renewal of an agreement for workers' compensation assistance from a third-party administrator. I will move it. Supported by Commissioner Nelson. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Olson. Commissioners, as noted, the action before the board is to approve a 2-year extension or agreement with PMA companies for service, third-party administration services to our workers' compensation program. Director Austin is here to talk through the program. I will just say that with his leadership and that of then Deputy Administrator Mersch, we moved to a third-party administrator, and that's been a very huge and positive step. It's also, as you dig into the world of workers' compensation and risk management overall, you find out how complicated and challenging this whole area is. So I won't go into the whole issues of subrogation and reinsurance and negotiating agreements and cost savings, but except to say that I appreciate Director Austin's leadership on this, and the action before the board is for a 2-year period, an annual fee of $111,500 plus other ancillary charges, approve the extension of the agreement with PMA. And with your indulgence, Chair Olson, I'd have Joe come up to the podium and just talk a little bit more about the efforts that we're making for this very impactful area for an organization our size.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as you know, St. Louis County has a robust safety and risk management program who has 2 primary goals. The first of these is to protect county employees, our assets, and our customers by preventing accidents and incidents from occurring to the fullest extent possible. We call this loss control. Number 2 is to minimize the impact and costs associated with accidents and incidents when they do occur. And we do this through our workers' comp, auto, property casualty programs that we run internally. These programs have paid big dividends over the years in terms of monetary savings to St. Louis County, but more importantly, injuries and fatalities avoided. Specific to our workers' comp program, the county has implemented several cost containment strategies that have resulted in expedited medical treatment for employees, decreased lost time associated with injuries, decreased medical costs, and a decrease in claim-related litigation expenses. For years, our program has continued to evolve toward the objective of further increasing efficiency, minimizing associated costs, and maximizing customer service. As Administrator Gray pointed out, in 2016, after much consideration, including a full RFP process, St. Louis County entered into a service agreement with PMA companies to provide third-party administration of select portions of our workers' compensation program, including a RIMIS, or Risk Information Management System, and medical bill review cost containment services. This decision has resulted in actual savings of approximately $1.57 million in medical bill-related costs, and an additional $105,000 associated with the RIMIS system over the last 34 months. It's important to point out that in entering into this agreement with PMA, we did not change several things. We didn't change how we report our incidents via our 24-hour hotline. We didn't change how we provide loss control services, which is via our 3 master's level safety professionals who are embedded with our departments and work hand in hand with them. We didn't change how we provide case management services, which is internal through our internal case managers and adjusters. And we didn't change how we manage our litigation related to our cases. How we currently handle these items is considered best management practice and has yielded significant positive results for years. Also important is the fact that St. Louis County remains self-insured, self-administered for workers' comp and maintains all authority over all claim-related decisions. The item before you today is simply a renewal agreement with PMA for the exact same services they have provided for us for the last 34 months. The costs associated with these services include an annual fee of $111,500 and medical cost containment at a rate of $7 per bill, not to exceed $30,000 per year. These costs are identical to those we originally negotiated in our contract. They haven't gone up. We are asking today that the board authorize the appropriate county officials to execute amendments to the service agreement with PMA Company for third-party administrative services associated with our work comp program for the 2020 and 2021 years.
Thank you. Any questions at all from the board? Comments, Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, thank you for the work that you've done over there since we made this switch out of the attorney's office and got this under risk management. A great example of what was a runaway claim that we made a switch on. You saw one earlier today in Anita Provenzino. We're seeing another one here in Director Austin. And costs have come down because we had the courage to make a change. And that courage is something that we need to continue to have as we examine each and everything that impacts our budget. Now, in fairness, Joe did come into this with 2 nursing homes and our eventual departure from the nursing home business. But the work that he's done just in dealing with our employees, safety and risk management, the work that he's done in helping us design buildings. I don't think when he took this job, I don't ever think he imagined that he'd be in the building design business. But those changes that we've made in our buildings for Arrowhead Regional Corrections within the same, I'll give you one great example, Arrowhead Regional Corrections in the Virginia Courthouse. We used to have an incident there once a week, guaranteed. We have not had an incident there since those design changes were implemented. Not one. It is truly amazing. And those are things that keep down work comp costs. Because every time we went to rearrest an offender, it was an issue. And with design and with some of the other measures that have been implemented through Joe's office and others, we're seeing some significant changes. And our work comp eventually is going to come down and continues to come down as the legacy costs of those nursing homes start to fade away. It's hard to imagine that it's been 18 years since we closed Nopamine and we're still paying legacy costs. It's been 10 years since we got out of the nursing home business at Chris Jensen, even though it continues to operate at a profit. Those legacy costs still continue. So we still have a roadmap in front of us, but the changes we made have made a difference. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Any other commissioners? Seeing none, thank you, Joe. We'll move this to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair Boyle.
Chair Olson, next up, Central Management, Commissioner Musa.
Thank you, Chair Boyle. 3 items on the agenda today. First being letter number 19-521, reappointments to the St. Louis County Board of Adjustment. I will move this. Do we have a second?
Support.
Supported. Administrator Gray, can you frame this?
Thank you, Chair Musaf. As you noted, the action before the board is to, in this case, reappoint 3 interested parties who an extended term or an additional term on the St. Louis County Board of Adjustment. This is a critical group to this county board in terms of the issues that they deal with and work through. So we're fortunate to have 3 veterans, if you will, who are interested in serving another term. This would be a 3-year term expiring at the end of December 2022. The 3 individuals are Roger Scraba, Ray Vados, and Diana Wershay. We thank them and the other members of the Board of Adjustment for their service and really hard work. This is a heavy lift at times, and so we're appreciative that these individuals wish to seek being reappointed.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Any questions or discussion? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Also, these 3 individuals, all 3 of them have been around for a long time. Administrator Gray mentioned the veterans, and the reappointment at this critical juncture as we're dealing with VRBOs, Airbnbs. I'm so pleased because these folks know the workload that's ahead of them in the next year, and they're volunteering to come back on. And that workload has been extensive, and it will be extensive in those, and I will not comment on the next one because the Planning Commission is the same issue. We have a single member there that's been around a long time, lives up on Lake Vermilion, and just dedicated people that are having a voice in what is now a very critical time for this county. I did mention to a couple of commissioners earlier, but to mention to everyone, we did have a meeting on VRBOs and we have a workshop coming up on Thursday. I think that this board will be pleased at the work product that comes out of that workshop on Thursday. I believe but all of us on the Planning Commission and all of the Board of Adjustment members realize that even as we draft and pass the resolution pertaining to the VRBOs, that's not the end of the work, that's actually the beginning of the work, because it's going to be likely a 2 to 3 year process to get this implemented and, so to speak, get the kinks ironed out on it so that it's an effective program that serves the people of St. Louis County. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll move it to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Okay, second on the list is letter number 19-522, reappointment to St. Louis County Planning Commission. I will move this. Do we have a second?
Support.
Supported. Administrator Gray, can you frame it?
I sure can. Thank you, Director or Commissioner Musaf. And this is a reappointment to the St. Louis County Planning Commission. Again, another group of individuals who provide yeoman's service to the county and to this board. The Planning Commission is a 9-member board. We have 1 member who wishes to be reappointed, and that's David Pollock. And this too would be a 3-year term commencing in January and ending in December of 2022.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Okay, number 3 on our list is letter number 19-523, committee vacancy appointments to the CDBG Citizens Advisory Committee. This one has a little extra to it with applicants. I would like to move this for discussion. Do I have a second? Seconded. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Musaf. We have a request to appoint a number of individuals to fill existing vacancies on the Community Development Block Grant CDBG Citizen Advisory Committee. These individuals, too, are integral to the administration of our CDBG grant funding and the distribution of those proceeds, both programmatically and geographically. We have terms expiring for 3 at-large representatives, a representative from the City of Evlith, and a representative from Hermantown, as well as the Association of Townships and Southern Townships representatives. You will note in the resolution that we received 6 applications for the existing 5 vacancies at present. 3 are at large. The City of Evlith had 1 applicant, John Rousey, who is interested in that role, and the County Association, St. Louis County Association of Townships, Marcia Haig. So what we have is 4 remaining individuals for the 3 positions of at-large representative to the CDBG Advisory Committee. Those individuals are James Glancy from Virginia, Rory Johnson from Proctor, Sasha Lado from Morecambe Township, and Teresa Linso from Cook. So the action of the board today, in addition to presumptively approving Ms. Haig and Mr. Rousey, would be to identify 3 candidates for the at-large positions of the 4 applicants.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. I would like to open it up to discussion here on the applicants, or maybe more so recommendations if we have some here. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Musa. I would like to weigh in on, at least on behalf of Jim Glancy. Jim brings a wealth of experience at Arrowhead Economic Opportunity Agency, and just a true professional that I think would add value to this committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Jukic.
Thank you, Chair. I also like to weigh in on, I do know only one of the individuals, and I'm sure that these are all high-quality, high-energy people that actually end up getting on this board and doing a lot of great things. I do know Sasha Lado personally. I think she'd be a great addition, but I do have a question on that. This is for the at-large, right? Mm-hmm. So wouldn't she fit on the Township Officers Association under that? Would that be a possibility? It says open here on the...
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Nelson.
I was at the last Township Officers meeting and reaffirmed that the Township Officers Association wishes to appoint Marcia Haig as their representative.
Okay.
If that clears that matter up.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
So again, I just would like to throw my support to Sasha. I do know her personally, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Jukovic. Commissioner McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Musaf. I would also like to speak highly of Sasha. I've known her for many, many years, been involved in township government, along with a good knowledge of the entire area in St. Louis County. Her experience is impeccable, and I would like to speak on her behalf. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, I think this is maybe the 2nd or 3rd time since I've been on the board that we've had these applicants for these different positions. And it's somewhat difficult being a Duluth commissioner because these positions are more outside of the Duluth area, to know how these applicants are. You're almost kind of shooting in the dark because you just have their application, your resume in front of you, and that's it. And I know it's extremely difficult. Most of these people are working during the day during our meetings, so we can't really expect them to take a day off of work to come down and present in front of us. But it's just tricky. Again, on my side, not getting to really know any of these applicants, other than they all look great, but I don't know. So it's somewhat cumbersome with this process being the Duluthian. Just going to weigh that in. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Nelson.
To that, Mr. Chair, if I may, I would point out that none of these decisions and/or dollars are within the city of Duluth. These are all, city of Duluth has their own community development block grant. This is all outside of it. I did note, as I was reviewing this, Chair Commissioner Mussoff, that we did have an applicant from the Proctor area who, even though he's a coach and a referee, I still might be inclined to give him some support. I think it's important that we have someone from down in that area, they do, because we do have, from time to time, as I've reviewed CDBG applications, of course, there are applications from very southern reaches of what is our CDBG impact area. And it just would seem that there's some geographical importance to Mr. Johnson's submittal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner McDonald.
I picked on coaches. Referees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, even though he is a coach and a referee, I have known Mr. Johnson for 40-plus years. Retired now, and would be not only a geographical representative from the Proctor area, but a valuable representative for all of St. Louis County. I worked with him when I was a high school athletic director, and had the opportunity to continue to work with him when I was on the Minnesota State High School League Board of Directors, and he would be a good addition as well.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald.
Mr. Chair, could I put this in a motion for you, at least for consideration? I would move then, given that we move a slate forward of Councilor Rousey, John Rousey, Clerk Marcia Haig, she's a clerk in Kelsey Township, along with the the three of the four representatives that applied for the at-large, and that would be Jim Glancy, Rory Johnson, and Sasha Leto, and I would move that slate, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion accepted and a second. Okay, we've heard the names, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, and back to you, Chair Boyle.
Thank you, Commissioner Mussoff. Next up, Commissioners, before we get into Commissioner discussion, items and reports, we have Director Mersch, who drove all this way up. She's going to give us a quick update on pending solutions for DHS and the bombshell they threw on us a couple weeks ago that we discussed last week, legislative priorities. Director Mersch.
Thank you. I'm going to send around 3 handouts. One is just from yesterday, so I can pass those to. Really, I just want to be sure you have the best information that I have about what is happening with DHS and the status of some payments that the state agency is determining that counties either will directly repay or lose payment for or have a role in processing a repayment. And so, especially in advance of a legislative meeting, I think it's important that you have a chance to just feel like you have the best information that I have, which is evolving. There were emails last night, there were emails this morning. It's moving quickly from the state, and most of our information isn't coming from DHS themselves at this point. So I'll just go over very briefly the 3 categories and a little bit of analysis, and then request maybe a board directive related to one of them. So in the memo that you have there from, let's see, what's the date? November 18th, so about 2 weeks ago, counties were informed of improper payments and an obligation to recoup funds from counties in 3 categories. The first category is the most significant. It's about $10 million, just under $10 million, $9 million on a state level, and it's related to the county share for substance use disorder payments to facilities that are 16 beds or greater over a multi-year period, starting in 2014, going through early 2019. So St. Louis County's share is significant. It's what, $700 thousand. This is a sensitive issue for us as well. I mean, contingency planning for that kind of a cost when we have a cost share on the state portion of these expenses that are MA reimbursed. We don't have a mandated cost share on the federal portion, so when the federal portion goes away, there's some legal kind of analysis going on. Hennepin County is taking the lead on, can the state even require us to pay a share that technically isn't considered a state share? So there's a lot of complications around this, but a $700,000 hit to our budget obviously is concerning, especially when our levy is set. Year end is tight for our department budget this year. We already have a risk factor for 2020 in the same budget category. If you remember, this past session, we're in the midst of major substance use disorder reform on a federal level. Minnesota's working through its plan. There's been a ton of turnover in DHS in this area. And there was a couple bills that passed related to what the state share will be for different substance use disorder payments beginning, it was supposed to begin July 1st of 2019. If you remember, there was a drafting error related to the implementation date, not the funding for it, but the implementation date for one of the pieces that moved it into July 1st. Early guidance, May, June, July, was that was going to be corrected, as drafting errors typically are. It was not a budget item, it was a drafting error. However, that did not happen, and so our budget incorporated about $600,000 of savings that will not be realized until July 1st of next summer. So we already have a risk factor in kind of this broad substance use area already. So to find out that we may have to repay $700,000 is difficult. Administrator Gray and I have been working through kind of some contingency planning, but we have not yet received any guidance from DHS to, one, corroborate these numbers. As you can imagine, counties have a lot of skepticism about data, facts, we're following directives, and yet we find out later that wasn't appropriate. And so just show us the math, show us the numbers, show us the utilization, show us the actual 4 years of history getting to this data. So we don't have that yet. What I'm understanding from AMC is that DHS is going to begin recouping this in their regular bills to us in this category. They're not even going to separate out what's a past due from this change from what we currently owe, which for our existing cost share in substance use disorder. So there was a memo from the Association of Minnesota Counties, AMC, yesterday afternoon, which I provided a copy to you, which is requesting on behalf of their executive board that no county pay these. Some counties owe like $40 total, 4 years. We owe $700,000. But they're saying we have power together, please, no counties should pay this. And they are actually asking that counties get authority from their boards to submit, to notify DHS in writing that our county will repay DHS after the conclusion of the 2020 legislative session. If you remember, this memo came out after the two tribes, the whole news that broke around the two tribes, who also, different issue, different payments, but all under the substance use disorder framework, that area of the Department of Human Services, owe back to DHS, $30-some million. So this $10 million came out after that. And again, there's some legal parameters, but there's a lot of questions from counties about if other partners, whether they're tribal governments or providers, are held harmless, counties should really attempt to be held harmless. Whether that's money from the legislature, I don't know, but there's certainly a lot of energy around saying counties typically have really a lack of power, as you know, maintenance of efforts, kind of cost shifts, things like that frequently happen in the area of health and human services, to be together with our other county colleagues and saying, we are not going to pay, we are going to sort through the minutia of billing to figure out what portion is current and pay our current bills, but not begin that repayment of the $700,000 until the 2020 legislature has concluded and we know if there's going to be any resolution to this. So that would be one consideration. I think there, again, like I said, there's legal questions that we're working through. There's plenty of legislative discussion around how can DHS require this of counties? Where does this money come from? Counties were following DHS guidelines. We don't have a cost share for this portion of expenses. And I think Micah put it well in one of their many emails about all of this. They said, finally, this situation really underscores the problems with placing cost share mandates upon counties in the first place. As highlighted by these recent events, state mandates add to the complexity, accountability, misalignment, and inefficiency of financing mechanisms for human service programs. So, we're kind of happy to be part of those broader conversations just around transparency, accountability, clarity for counties, for our providers, for ultimately the people that are served through these programs. So I think it'll be an opportunity for all of that. So that's the first category. If you want, I can go through the other two quickly and then respond to questions, or if you want to stop for questions now.
Director Marcia, first, so your suggestion of having a resolution of support for this, is it all right that this is at the committee of the whole and that it moves forward on the...
Yeah, we reviewed that yesterday.
I think that we can provide with a nod of the head some administrative direction. I spoke briefly to Commissioner Olson in this regard, and if it's the consensus of the board, we would submit a letter as AMC is requesting of other counties. One, requesting delay of repayments, especially if it's buried in a part of a different bill where you can't even decipher which is the repayment, which is the ongoing programmatic theme. And two, it implies a strong sense of state responsibility to help restore the fiscal situation here, and of course encouragement to DHS to reform its direction and how we are transparent in this. So this is something that I think that we have done in the past where administratively I've been asked or department heads have been asked on behalf of the board to follow through on something, and I think that would be okay this time.
I think that having administration write the letter is a good idea. I think it is absolutely appropriate and actually important that we vote as a board to support this specific idea that, and I'd be willing to put it into a motion that we send a letter to DHS saying that we will repay this amount only after the conclusion of the 2020 Minnesota legislative session if the issue is not resolved by other means.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor. Attorney Mackey, how are we going to deal with this now if we have a motion on the floor? Can we get it out as soon as possible, or?
Mr. Chair, the standing rules of the county board require that every resolution be made in writing with an explanation. And so in order for this to be considered here today in a resolution form as opposed to a directive motion of some sort, it would need to be done in writing. That doesn't, and a copy would need to be made available to the public as well. That doesn't need to, we could take a break and have it written up quickly if that's what the board wanted to do, but it does need to be in writing.
I'd advise taking a quick break so that we get it on the, done, we write it out and we have it.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, if we're volunteering to pay for this at the end of the legislative session, I have a concern about that. I don't think we should do that. I think what we have here, first of all, this board knows what I feel, what I think about AMC. And the fact is, just jumping in with AMC on an issue like this, I don't think is necessarily a good idea. Now, if you look at this, The real players at AMC are Hennepin and Ramsey. Hennepin is the one with the biggest problem. So Hennepin has the most at stake, and if Hennepin wants something done at AMC, it gets done. But to say to this legislature that, or to the DHS, that we're somehow gonna pay it if this legislature doesn't fix it, I would guess that this legislature is likely not going to be able to fix this problem, given the complexity of this problem and the complexity of the problem that is with the tribal communities. This is small potatoes when you consider, when you look at and lay it next to what the tribal communities are doing. So I'd feel a lot more comfortable myself directing administration with the signature of our chair to respond to this appropriately, but I'm not in the mood to tie in with AMC, because I think Hennepin County has taken a position that they're actually threatening to sue the state on this issue, correct? Take legal action, I think
They're
was
certainly reviewing the legal.
and we might be in that same situation where we, we might be saying, look, this is accrued over 4 years, over the course of 4 fiscal years. And how can this burden then be arbitrarily placed on counties, given the fact that 3 of those years are no longer even part of the auditing process? So I don't know where we're at. I would sooner leave it to administration with the signature of our chair as a response at this point. The one thing I do want to know though, Linnea, how in the world is St. Louis County at 692,876 when Ramsey is at 629, Olmsted is at 361, and Stearns is at 238? I want an explanation of how that number got to be too, because why are we second in the state of Minnesota?
Director Marsh.
Yes, a couple of items. So I think, as you all know, St. Louis County typically is in the top 3 or top 5 for every deep end expenditure. So we're kind of trying to right that ship, and some of that is ours to do. A lot of that is the community providers and what needs to be built out and available locally. So that's true in substance use disorder, that's true in residential treatment for children, that's true in mental health, step up, step down services, it's true in our hospitals, it's what our Clarity Project is about. I mean, it's just true across the board. So this is one of those deep end services where we are going to be a disproportionate utilizer. However, this is how these amounts accumulated, is every time someone income qualifies for subsidized chemical dependency treatment, there is something called the Consolidated Chemical Dependency Treatment Fund. There is 50% of that treatment is then billed to the federal government. The other 50%, 15% of that is the county share. The remaining 35% is the state share. So that's kind of the rule, that's kind of in general how subsidized treatment costs work. Where the federal government is saying, as of 2014, 50% can't be billed, is for chemical dependency treatment facilities where there's 16 beds or more. So IMDs. That's a real common, also kind of federal change in every area. Children's residential, over 16 beds, we lose different reimbursement structures. It's just, that's kind of a, treatment facilities in general are getting smaller, more local or outpatient in general, or they're having to meet hospital level criteria to be billing over 16 beds. So we have a lot of treatment programs, even in St. Louis County, that are over 16 beds. Everything CADT offers, over 16 beds. So I mean, we have some providers that offer large residential programs that are over 16 beds. So they're not only outside of St. Louis County.
Commissioner Julich.
Thank you, Chair Boyle.
an astronomical amount of money to be thrown at us. I know mistakes were made. I certainly hope at some point that mistakes can be corrected and we can move forward without having to worry about what comes next. Clearly, things were let go. But at the end of the day, I would agree with Commissioner Nelson. I don't know if I necessarily want to jump on board and be on the hook, so to speak. And doing this long enough, I've learned with political things, sometimes you have to let it come to you. And I just want to see where this goes and how this plays before I will agree to say, yeah, we'll take care of that after, or do anything specific. So I'd like to wait a little bit and not move into this.
Okay, Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Jewell.
On that point, that I also agree and would rather that any message that we're sending to DHS says that we're not going to pay it, and that we're pretty clear on that there's a number of things that need to be resolved and not put a time frame on it, like 2020 legislature end, or not put a time frame on it, but let them know that there's a number of things that are being resolved and that we're not going to make any payments until we feel that those have been satisfactorily resolved. And that I'm okay with that coming in a letter. I'm kind of okay with that coming in a resolution too. So I think that can, that is something that I feel like is really is important.
And I would say, Commissioner Olson just to add in, I think if commissioners are interested in the resolution, we can certainly be back December 17th with a resolution in front of you, time, consider your input here. Today's time specific was really to ensure that you had the most accurate information I have about this, especially in advance of legislative discussions around this and many other topics. This request for action from AMC came out yesterday evening, so it was a possible administrative motion, but if you would prefer a resolution, the December 17th meeting is an option.
I don't. With that said, that sways me toward the letter. I think that timeliness is really important here, that we need to get this in the hands of DHS as soon as possible. I think they need to see a clear, direct response from us. And I don't know that waiting is a good idea. I mean, our resolution's stronger, so it's like, half one, six.
Commissioner Jewell, are you okay? I know you started this process. Would you give a little stronger language?
I didn't get a second for the purposes of discussion, so I'll just go on discussing. I don't really care whether or not we do this. I will tell you from my conversation with Ms. Mersch yesterday, one of the points here is we don't have any power in this by ourselves. We're going to have to pay it. They're just going to take it from us. So it's not like we get to say we're not paying you. It's going to be withdrawn from accounts that they pay us. And so one of the things that's clearly true is we need a pretty strong statement from us that we and all the other counties, hopefully, are united in not paying it. And I agree it's not paying it. I will tell you that the language they came up with is asking the legislature to do something about it and being real clear. So it doesn't have to be a resolution. I think it's stronger as a resolution. It says we're all, we don't think they ought to be stealing this back from us, which is what they're about to start doing. And that's the piece that it really just sticks in my craw, is that there's nothing we can do.
Especially with the $1 billion surplus that the state will be having this year. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Boyle. The $1 billion surplus is a shell game too, but look, I think it's important that we also look at any and all legal recourse. And I would ask administration to consult with their county attorney and see if it would be appropriate to, they're essentially talking about garnishing payments. That's essentially what they're talking about doing to us. And I think we could potentially join up with a Hennepin as an example and seek a court injunction against any garnishment of payments. It would certainly give us a stronger position when we go to the legislature if we get that court ruling. And I think we have a good position to argue to get that court ruling. My other question, Linnea, is there has been no talk about reimbursement from the tribal communities, correct? I haven't heard any.
That is correct. I mean,
Okay.
this is,
So we, the counties, are absolutely being treated differently than another government entity, which the tribal communities are.
yeah.
I know their reimbursement is probably more federal than state.
Well, let me maybe restate. I mean, I think we agree with the premise that somehow if the only entity in this whole situation that ends up paying, back paying for a state error or misguidance
It's the county.
is a county, there's something wrong with the balance and share of power and responsibility. It is very clear in statute that, and the federal government is requiring DHS to claw back from counties as well as from 2 tribal nations. However, the legislative auditor lacks power to look into tribal government finances. Like the Minnesota legislative auditor doesn't have that power and authority to go with. So I think there's just it's a really different situation, but yet agree that it's worth watching closely right now.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may follow on that, I think our approach needs to be two-pronged. One, a very strongly worded letter. 2, a potential assessment of potential legal action. And, you know, we pay MICA dues every year. And sometimes I wonder why we pay them, but it is to keep our enemies closer than our friends. So here's a chance where we could maybe tap MICA and say, because you look at even Dakota's in there for a chunk, and say, would MICA be interested in doing a class action against the state, potentially seeking an injunction against the state from garnishing, essentially garnishing payments. I think we should look at that.
Mr. Gray.
Well, so we have lots of input on very significant issues here, and there's deeper-seated systemic issues that are part of contributing to this outcome. I am hearing strong support that we, one, don't want, or maybe don't need to, or legally shouldn't be required to pay. We certainly shouldn't, to Commissioner Jewell's point, have it be taken out as, or whoever used the garnishment. I guess Commissioner Nelson used garnishment, and Commissioner Jewell talked about how it really rubs us the wrong way that they could just take the money out of a normal payment. So with respect to the multi-pronged approach, I'm hearing strong support from the board for Director Mersch, myself, John Ongaro in his lobbyist role to reach out to MICA and AMC, explain our angst. Broadly, we support their messaging. However, just for instance, under notifying that the county will repay, I hear that loud and clear. We won't even consider repayment until after the session. But at that point in time, hopefully we'll have some fiscal outcome through the legislature. We intend to bring it up this afternoon or this evening with our legislative delegation. And, you know, the tentative outreach or the preliminary outreach that individual commissioners have had and administration has had, we've received wonderful support from our legislative delegation and an awareness of this impact. But that session doesn't start till February 11th. In the meantime, to Commissioner Olson's point, I think we do need to put DHS on alert. So I would suggest that we alert DHS of our great concerns on this individually at this point, and that we will be following up with board resolution and action, and even considering the legal implications. Then we'll have a follow-up letter, probably with the board resolution on the 17th, that highlights our position and I think it'll be a little bit more aggressive than AMC's. But I do think that in this particular instance, the power of 87 counties or the power of 14 counties in MICA add to the stature, and I'll reach out to Matt Hilgert and Matt Mossman, both in their roles, leadership roles at those two organizations, to express looking at the legal side of it as well. This was a conversation item, as you can imagine, in a conference call I had yesterday with other county administrators from the MICA organization with MICA staff. And sometimes it's the art of the politics becomes the art of the possible. And when you have the federal government in there too, it adds even more complexity and maybe a little less flexibility. So to sum it up, I think we will send a letter with the as the direction of this board to DHS. We will draft a resolution for review and approval or voting on December 17th that reflects the input from all the commissioners today, and send a follow-up letter. We will be supportive of AMC and MICA attention and lobbying on this, but we also state our own case very specifically. And finally, we will reach out to, in particular, Hennepin County, because I think they may, on the legal side, help inform us, and maybe there is some legal action. We'll work with Attorney Mackey and her team on that to look at it even in more depth. So we'll send a first letter very shortly expressing our concerns, and especially around having payments deducted, and that we don't intend to repay until we have more legislative direction and oversight and more clarification of the numbers. We'll follow up with a resolution and a letter, and we'll also work with our lobbying partners, if that sounds good to the board. It's these are big numbers. Linnea, well, we can talk about the other two categories. There's some fiscal impact of a lesser degree with respect to the Title IV e-payments. Nonetheless, it's a fiscal impact. She's already been, Linnea's already been forward-thinking in our contracts for services and background checks being a requirement for other contract services. And so that's something that we think will be not an issue going forward. It's just something we've already taken into account. And maybe you could talk, if you would, Director Mercer, a little bit about the 4 e-payments, but specifically we'll follow up with the tact I described based on the feedback from this collective board with respect to the side issue and that clawback.
Thank you. I think that was worded well. So one, Commissioners, we will have that sharply worded letter to DHS to the draft of a resolution at our next board meeting of the year. My only question, Director Mayor, are you going to be there tonight at our captive audience legislative dinner? Does it make sense that we have this sharply worded letter to hand out to the legislative group tonight?
I think there's enough, if I could, excuse me, I think there's enough attention to this. We're going to have to refine this letter because there's a lot to cover, and I think it deserves more than a couple hours on the back of a napkin in advance of the meeting. But I think we can highlight the points and our commitment to reaching out to DHS with our concerns and our support of other counties who are equally challenged, at least on a per capita basis in some cases. But it is very notable that we are the second largest gross number of dollars, total dollars, that is a result of this clawback. It's very significant to us, and I think it deserves that sharply worded letter, but probably in the next 24 to 36 hours, because I do think Commissioner Olson's right. Some feedback to DHS is in a very timely basis, unique to St. Louis County, with a reference to the broader county actions, makes sense. So.
Okay. When we only have this group once a year, so we got to seize the day on them. That's one of my thoughts.
We'll work on it. We have it, and it passes muster. We'll have something to share with them, but we'll certainly share the same sentiments. And again, I want to thank the commissioners. All of you have reached out to legislators and others and weighed in on this and been very supportive and understanding that in the end, we want to make sure that our taxpayers are treated fairly. And that's been the sentiment of the board.
All right, any other comments, commissioners, on that? Director Marsh, you got a couple more things?
Two more quickly, but they were all included in the same November 18th letter, so I want to be sure you have some full information about them. The second category where there is some essentially clawback or there will be a lack of planned reimbursement is related to 4E, federal, what has been federally funded for group childcare, because facilities have not met the new enhanced background checks. So just a little bit of our best estimate for this, the second category, is that the St. Louis County impact is about $50,000 a quarter. So this would be potentially 3/4, worst case scenario, 3/4 worth of impact, $150,000. We received a bulletin with instructions about this in October. It's a very interesting bulletin to read. It puts out a March deadline for providers to meet this and a March 21st deadline for family daycare providers. So obviously that's not going to really work if we can't get paid for them and we still have people using these childcare facilities. So we had already been talking with all of the childcare facilities in our county about their progress towards the enhanced background checks, because we've known they've been coming for a while with Under Families First, another federal reform. We are incorporating in our 2020 contracts that they all need to comply with these enhanced background checks, and we're also working on a state work group around this right now. A conversation that Paula Stocky was in on, what day is it? Yesterday, I believe, or maybe last Wednesday. DHS is considering incentives where these providers don't have to pay for the background checks. They have a backlog issue with how quickly they can process these new net studies. So there's a number of issues in the works, but it's a difficult one for counties to be fiscally impacted or penalized for when we really don't have an ability to ensure that it happens swiftly, nor are we the communicator of the guidance. So we're doing what we can. It's been on our radar, but we, again, really need the state to step up with some incentives or new deadlines. The third category is an interesting one. It is it is not federal guidelines. It is a cash assistance overpayment. So what this one is that DHS apparently erred in giving counties guidance on what to do when errors are discovered in cash assistance overpayments. A law was passed in 2016 that counties could not claw back that money from people who received the assistance unless a quote-unquote reasonable person would have noticed the error. So I'm not sure what exactly this is going to look like as we move forward, but DHS is estimating that over $700,000 was collected back from recipients for overpayments that are technically overpayments, but don't meet this reasonable notice, kind of like a reasonable adult wouldn't recognize them as such. So I don't believe this is ultimately going to fiscally impact the county, other than our staff are going to have to be in the midst of all of this. All the payments are entered by us, all the overpayments are entered by us, everything's processed. We are, it's like anything in public assistance. We are the data entry, we are the servicer, we are the call banks. It's going to be that kind of a situation where we're going to have a lot of work and rework to correct these systems. So again, we are trying to prioritize time for staff to be involved in the ongoing conversations at DHS about this, but the next meeting isn't until a week from Friday to even begin to discuss how they're gonna figure this out. So more to come, but that this should not be a fiscal impact to the county. It's gonna be confusing for staff, and it's gonna be a lot of rework for staff, but it should all just be passed through money eventually. Any questions about the second or third category?
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Marsh. Thank you. All right, Commissioners, on that high note, we'll move on to Commissioner discussion items and reports. Commissioners? Anything? If not, we have time, so can we go a little bit later than 1 o'clock to?
I will call them on the way. Lunch is at the Good Old Days on the Main Street in Tower, right across from the grocery. And then when we're finished with lunch, I'll try to, they were very flexible, so I'll call them on the way and the plan right around 1:30 for the.
Okay, Commissioners, any other reports, comments? Seeing none, we'll move to adjourn. Second. Second by Commissioner Musaf. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Even if you didn't say it. Even if you didn't say it, we'd have to.
What's up? Everybody, or you're coming, we'll do it.